going to be talking about resilience and recovery and Ukraine's economic outlook. I'm very honored to welcome Dmytro Natalukha, Chairman of the Economic Affairs Committee of the Parliament of Ukraine, and Andrii Nikolaienko. Did I do that right?
Yeah.
I did? Yes. I'm like 3 for 3 today. Andrii is a member of Parliament of Ukraine as well, Subcommittee for Capital Markets, and lucky you, I'm moderating the session. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
So you've been listening into some of the sessions today. What are your kind of overall thoughts so far?
First of all, it was impressive that how deep was knowledge of some American visitors about Russia and the understanding of Ukrainian situation in details, and the readiness to be sometimes unpopular, but very straight and very pro-Ukrainian when they come in the situation, and especially the last changes, what's going on right now on the front line.
You were very polite. You said, "I'll start with the opposition."
That was a joke.
Which was always that
we're all buddies. No, it was indeed insightful. So thank you very much for doing this and for having us here. I'd be honest with you. I have heard much more resolve that I was counting on, I'm getting out of here in a rather optimistic mood. That's not something I was expecting before I came here.
Well, I'd say that's a win. We have obviously been here. I think I told everybody just at the beginning of the session earlier today for several days and had several meetings. We had the opportunity to meet with both of you earlier. What we didn't focus on a lot at the time was the economic impact of this war, which clearly is a devastating war, but also the opportunity that we've heard in several of the panels today about the growth of the economy here if the war can be won, and how Ukraine actually will be transformed into something of more of an economic powerhouse, if you will, than its current situation. So why don't we start with where we are now, the impact economically, the struggles, the challenges, and how you're addressing those. And I want to end our conversation on a positive note because I want you to come with this happy feeling and talk about what is possible here. So let's start. Andrii, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, again for opposition. So first of all, result of the more than 2 years of the war, of the active war, and 10 years of general war from 2015, it's very, very visible, and it's maybe not so visible here in Kyiv, but even in neighborhood like European, you can easily see what mean just a few weeks of Russian occupation, and in a month. But there are a big part of Ukraine which is now under heavy attack, and a big portion of Ukraine is occupied. And of course we have very direct losses, but we also have indirect losses. If we're talking about figures, it's very simple. We lost more than half of our budget. This year, the first quarter of this year demonstrated that we have better taxation policy. We have better results as we see from the first quarter of the year, but it's much far from even 2022, what we have as a line. At the same time, we lost probably temporarily, but someone is for forever. It's the people of Ukraine. So we are losing labor forces, and many of people who left Ukraine, it was mid class, it was entrepreneur, and important is how we can operate in economy after war without that people. Because right now our budget almost fully using, almost fully, like for more than 90%, using for support the army, for military expenses, and all our expenses is covered by foreign help and aid. Some of that aid is coming by credit, some as a grant. But if we consider, if we just look more in detail how we have the resources, we see that our banking system now, which has demonstrated very good result, visible result, and currency is plus minus stable, but in fact is not really actively involved in finance of real economy, and our banking system and financial system is more concentrated just to keep financial stability, not to be the big factor to help economy and the country to survive, which is very different than it was in First and Second World War in the United States. In the US, banking and financial sector was actively involved and helped country to cover all expenses. In Ukraine, it's more about taxation plus foreign debt and foreign aid. And I think this is something what we need to change faster because, and also importantly, we have huge, and we appreciate for that, huge support from IMF. But now when our state debt is close to 150 billion, the last package from IMF, and the financial people will understand, it's extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. That here, interest rate 8.5, it means that we are going to pay this next year up to 1% of GDP just to interest rate for this debt from IMF. And if we consider it from our assets, what we still have in the national bank, we need to pay up in next 10 years more than one third of that. So it's a big figure. So one of the critical things is how we need to work with financial sector and our counterpart to make Ukrainian real sector of economy is more effective to support Ukraine and Ukrainian army.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, one of the main vehicles in all the wars has indeed been the thing that is called prime pumping, which is basically a specifically designated emission by the central bank to finance specific industries and specific economic sectors. So that is different, absolutely true. What I would like to say, however, is to try to zoom out a bit and show you what is happening while we are contemplating this economic difficulties that we're having, what is happening in Russia and elsewhere. From the standpoint of the impact that this war has had, not just on the Ukrainian economy, but on the global economy as a whole. So what happened, in my opinion, is that the perception of power has changed dramatically. So this war has been a pivotal moment to reassess what is power in the world. So before 2022, power was mainly an economic category. So that meant that the stronger you were economically, the more power you were able to project. What Putin is trying to prove, the point he's trying to make, is that innovation, technologies, economy, these things do not matter anymore. What matters is demography. So the more people you have who are able to literally hold a Kalashnikov in hands and ram towards a tank, the more chances you have to win any war. So he's putting economy on the second, if not a third place, and on the first place, he's putting the sheer quantity of the population that any country has. Regardless of their standard of living, regardless of their education status, regardless of anything else. So in his opinion, quantity will trump quality by all means. And if he's right, and if his perception is the right one, and basically he will be able to prove this point by winning this war, then we are living in a very dangerous world. Because by no means any country in Europe, if not the European continent as a whole, can ever outmatch the population of China, of Russia, of Iran, of North Korea, even of India. Right? So this is what has changed. Brute force has become paramount again. not just the economy, but the quantity of the people who are able to wage war against you, regardless of all your fancy, sophisticated drones and things and innovations. We have seen a lot of examples here in Ukraine when the Russians have been launching their attacks with people who are armless, just to make the Ukrainian positions show themselves. So they consider people just as a resource that is so cheap that they can allow themselves to wage war in such a manner. And that must show you how important for them is the population. They don't care about those people. They can afford the luxury to spend them as an expendable, right? So, and this is a very dramatic turn in terms of what is power and what Russia considers to be the dominant force in the new geopolitics that we're now facing, right? This is brute force.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. So as members of parliament, what are the opportunities that you have to understand the situation at the moment, to make decisions that will put Ukraine on the strongest footing possible for a very long economic journey toward rebuilding, recovery, and then growth? How are you thinking about this as the war is still going on?
Okay, the good thing that we have next to me, I have the head of economic committee of the parliament. So the strategy, it's their part of job. But in my comment, I'd like to, and Ukraine actually, to be honest, we have the honest discussion. So Ukraine always has a problem with strategies. Every single government, every single president is coming and trying to create a new strategy, which is very different and not care about the previous strategies, even it was not bad, even good. But let me talk not about Ukraine, but also about make a parallel with another country who I know quite well, about South Korea. So when we are talking about post-war country, and I do believe it, if you ask about my dream, I dream about East European and South Korea, the country which is not just exists, but who is one of the most developed country in the world, with United States strategic partnership under US nuclear umbrella, but at the same time very independent in many international organizations and communities, has very well developed own armed forces and technological armed forces. What Ukraine have for that future? We have enough. First of all, we have the great location, strategic one, and it's not just our desire, but it's logics and all estimation how the situation can develop in this Black Sea region. Bring the interest of all representatives in this room and others to Ukraine and start to talk about investing right now. Because we have not just a great location, but also we have very rich ground. And I'm not very rich land. And I'm not talking about just the grain and grain export, what was discussed today earlier, but I'm talking about critical materials, which became more and more sensitive issue for the West, especially when Chinese and Russian suppliers are becoming toxic or sometimes even prohibited. So Ukraine is a very rich land and can be the one of key strategic partner for a West European country for very rare materials. And also but very sensitive, like lithium, beryllium, titanium, germanium. Ukraine, when the war started, invasion started, Ukraine was just a second largest supplier of gas for producing semiconductor now, and it was located. One of the biggest capacity was situated in Mariupol, and it was partly destroyed, partly was occupied by Russia, but it had impact on the whole semiconductor market worldwide. So it demonstrated that Ukraine has some unique components what can be included in that strategy. But another thing what I would like to underline, that I don't believe in a real strategy if it will be prepared and developed only by Ukrainians. Because Europe exists, European markets exist, and we see even the grain became like big reason for a problem with Poland. So if we would like to be in some chains, to be as a border supplier, we need to talk with our strategic partner, how they see the role of Ukraine after the war, what we can do, and how guarantee. That's Ukrainian reality. Fortunately for us, we are the B2, so we continue to work. So that's reality, and probably this sound is can demotivate a lot of investors. But example what was raised by Lena Kisharna, it's better than any comments. The people still investing, and there are some industries where your investor can be very protected and cannot be destroyed, at least easily.
I think this is the perfect reminder, though, of the amazing work that you're doing, living under conditions like this, that I think just, from my experience, I can't imagine a city in America that would be able to have their phone sirens go off indicating an air raid and stay focused on the future, stay focused on the now in order to forge ahead. So the mentality is very admirable. But okay, you're in charge of strategy, so?
No, under these conditions, I think the only strategy is adaptivity. And that is probably one of the most competitive advantages that we have. And not just during this war. I mean, don't get me wrong, we are in a territory that has been under at least 5 to 6 different empires throughout history. So in terms of the statehood of Ukraine as a state, we're as a new nation. But as a new state, but as a nation, whereas an old nation. That means that we have been adapting ourselves to survive under different regimes throughout all of our history. We had to adapt in order to literally continue and proceed living. So hence comes the corruption, all right? Not because it's an imminent factor of the Ukrainians, but because it was a mere vehicle to come to someone who never cared about yourself, saying, listen, I know you don't care about me, but don't make my life miserable, because you were the nation that has never elected its own government until 1991. So we have been always adapting ourselves to different conditions, and I would say that if you need to survive some calamity, just invite some Ukrainians. And I mean, they will tell you in a week or two how to do it. And that is probably something that the world needs today in this epoch of great calamities. I think that this war with Russia, it's not just something that will end and then the world will be at peace again. You shouldn't consider this from purely militaristic terms. We will be at war with bacteria, we will be at war with climate change, we will be at war with different factors that will be affecting humanity, and all these factors will be causing unpredictability. And that is where you would need this adaptivity. So, and I think that the best practices that we are developing here throughout this war on how to adapt, how to exist, and how to survive under these conditions, under circumstances that are constantly changing, are priceless in a way, and can be shared as a know-how to the other nations and the other states, starting from digital technologies, ending up with military technologies, approaches how to build buildings and premises that can resist a direct rocket hit, and so on and so forth. So I think this is something that we should be selling in a good way here in Ukraine. This ability to survive under the most harsh conditions, the ability to adapt under any circumstances, and basically to constantly innovate in order to keep on going. Even today, even under the sirens, as you mentioned, people keep on investing here, people keep on doing business, people are returning. So this is a perfect signal.
I also just want to offer anyone in the audience the opportunity to ask questions during this particular session. We've got about 10 minutes left, so if you have a couple, raise your hand and let me know. I do want to talk about what you're thinking about in terms of Ukraine's opportunities right now. We heard from Lena today. I mean, people are invested here. They are definitely, I think in the United States, for example, there's still a great deal of fear. There's a great deal of, we still don't know how this is going to end, which everybody always wants to know the ending before they jump in, and somehow are missing the opportunities that exist. As members of parliament, how are you looking at that? And what are you doing to try to either share the messaging or try to encourage the president to take whatever actions he can at the moment to encourage ways to strengthen the economy now?
In a way, I think we have accepted the circumstances that we are in. Of course, everyone wants this war to be finished for good. Everyone wants to win. But in a way, you cannot know for sure when and how is it going to happen. But look at it from this standpoint. It's the same as life is. You don't know how it's going to end or when it's going to end. But that doesn't mean that you don't dare to act, dare to take risks, dare to do stuff, to find some partners, to invest in some things, to buy yourself some property, some assets. It's basically the same. Yes, we have some additional risks, but I mean, if we would not learn how to deal with them or how to live with them, we would go crazy, or we would lose the country, right? So what I believe in is that this country will face an incredible pilgrimage once this war ends. Because this war is so overarching and it's so over-involving that basically in all the corners of the world you have people who have assisted someone from Ukraine, who have given shelter to someone from Ukraine, who have sent something to the Ukrainians, some bulletproof vest, some transformator for a school, some helmet, some car, whatsoever. And so, like, in a way, this war got too many people and too many nations involved. That in the end of the day, when this war will end for good, I imagine those people would like to come here and see those whom they have helped, to scratch the brick of the schools they have assisted, to visit the families they have sheltered, to visit the soldiers they have helped. So, in my opinion, we will be witnessing this kind of pilgrimage of all different sorts, not just in terms of investment, but in terms of culture, in terms of religion, in terms of science, in terms of military science, tourism, all the kind of things. And what I think might happen is the same that has happened in a way to Poland in the late 80s when Poland decided to leave the Soviet bloc. What happened is that basically the West said, okay, this is what will happen to those countries who have deliberately chosen the path of democracy and free market. And they have assisted and helped Poland to showcase a good example of a country that has deliberately become democratic and free trade oriented. Just to show the other communist countries that this is possible. Ukraine might be the same in terms of showcasing what might happen to a country that has deliberately chosen to fight for democracy, for freedom, for justice, for equality, for the cultures that we all embrace, so that you can then showcase the same to other countries who might find themselves in similar situations.
Okay, any questions? Frank, I thought you were standing up to ask a question, but you're just taking a picture. Paul Colby? I'm going to pick on you because you said in these same meetings that we were at the other day. I know you have questions.
No, I would just offer a comment from what you were just saying. I think exactly that point, that Ukraine can be a showcase to others around it, and I'm thinking particularly those east of it, who fears most. He fears the equivalent of West Berlin, an island of prosperity and democracy, support from the West, being an example that his citizens can see as they devolve into further poverty, further isolation, and further depression.
If I may, I agree completely, because otherwise the contrary is true. what is the worth then of the collective West, of all of its power, technologies, innovation, science, military duress, economic power, if with all of that, a country not as sophisticated as Russia is, was able to prevail over all of the Western so-called machine, right? So that would be groundbreaking and a tectonic shift in a lot of senses, in the first place for Europe, because that would make Russia literally a beacon on the hill, but not of democracy, but of a very different system that might be interesting to some countries like Hungary, countries like leaders from Hungary, from Slovakia, and the other Euroscepticists that would take the opportunity to change the system inside the continent.
And if I can add, I think during the war we see a very special part of the economy, which not just as a losses, but still increasing and developing well. It's high-tech and IT industry. Ukrainian export of this industry is growing during all the war years. And level of digitalization of your economy is very critical for the future success and realization of any other reforms. And I know that there are a lot of initiatives when people from Ukraine, from IT sector, entrepreneurs, they are helping to the countries, ex-Soviet Union republics, mostly in Central Asia and Caucasian countries, how to develop the IT sector, and through that channel, through that exchange of experience, digitalization of these countries, helping this society of this country is to also to wake up and be ready for another type of exchange. And that's something what Putin is really scared about. And he considers like open internet and open access to very new digital technologies, including the personal data and like exchange access to online education or some other apps as a threat for his regime. So I even know that one think tank who is working with all countries who surrounding Russia, taking to advantage from exchange experience, and that actually we are forming kind of network which help these countries to think Ukraine is a good example. And if we can have this war finish in the right way soon, then it can create another problem for Putin in different, very sensitive region for him.
Positive use of technology. Gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to try again. Dmytro.